There are three declines. One is the Waitakere Rangers Protection Society, who would like to talk about the deed of acknowledgement for Waitakere, but they were declined because the subject matter has had a consultation process, which means we don't then again have those 14,000 people come back and present. So that has been declined for that reason. Friends of Regional Park, Bronwyn Turner, details the request for endorsement of track reopening, request appropriate branch of council investigate and report back on budgets for those track upgrades. The reason for declines, Standing Order 7.7.3, C and D, one for time but also for relevance and speaking to the Parks Committee, but we've contacted Bronwyn Turner, myself, the Deputy Chair, Rachel Callagher, Scott and Councillor Turner as Chair of Parks will meet at a different time to discuss these details because they're largely for the annual plan or long-term plan, but we think there's some work that can be done short-term. So we will, I'm not sure if we've heard back from Bronwyn yet, but we will be meeting soon on that. And then the last decline was proposed changes to the local government powers and the changes to the RMA and around the four well-beings. The reason for declining is public input time to deal with the business on the agenda. We have local boards and a lot of public input, and if we will be well over time if we have this much public input today.
Mr. Chairman, I just make a comment. I emailed you and I haven't read your email yet because of all the helicopter emails. Thank you very much. But this does highlight that problem with where my park subcommittee to yourself doesn't have budget making decisions, and so it's important that we understand that some of those submitters do their best to extract the different things for the different places.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor. And yeah, technically this committee doesn't have those budget outcomes either, but we will meet with Bronwyn, see if we can work a way forward. If that's not the case, then we'll have her come back to a future meeting.
Good, thank you.
The accepted requests now, we move to Herne Bay Residents Association, Dirk and Don. Right, kia ora. Just get you to press the button on the right, and then you've got your 5 minutes, and then there'll be questions from the committee. Kia ora.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Hills. Just apology for Dirk, he's not well, so he's not here today. I believe we have a...
We'll just get you to move the microphone a little bit more towards yourself, just so those online can hear. Perfect,
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that better? So this is about the landing of helicopters in residential zones. This isn't about a helicopter a mile away, this is about a helicopter over the fence from your next door neighbour and the effects on that. So thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Don Matheson, I'm co-chair of the Herne Bay Residents Association. So that's a helicopter. That's one of the ones similar to the ones that are all landing in most of the helipads around our areas on Waiheke Island in Auckland. So I'm here on behalf of many residents of Herne Bay and elsewhere who are increasingly disturbed by the use of helicopters very near to our houses and recreation areas and the permissive council policies on the issue of new consents in residential areas, particularly near residences. Prior to the Auckland Unitary Plan, residential helipads were a restricted discretionary activity subject only to noise restrictions. So that meant that if the first thing that you would know if your neighbour had obtained a consent was when the helicopter landed on your neighbour's property. After the implementation of the Auckland Unitary Plan, Auckland Council experts who we have consulted with regularly, including Ian Smallburn, the General Manager of Resource Consents, and Craig Hobbs, the Director of Regulatory Services, all assured us and were working with us regarding resource consent applications and compliance on the basis that with the new Auckland Unitary Plan non-compliant designation, scrutiny of any application would be much more rigorous, including effects on neighbours So that's the difference between restricted discretionary and non-compliant. Restricted discretionary only really takes into account the noise. A recent decision by Council for 38 Rawene Ave, Westmere consent application contradicts all the council experts' views and categorises private landing pads as restricted discretionary, with only noise effects on neighbours considered. Additionally, in this case, the Auckland Unitary Plan noise limits were exceeded. However, this was disregarded on the basis that apparently very few people could notice the near doubling of noise levels, the extra 2 decibels difference made. I have to point out 2 decibels doesn't sound very much, but it's actually a logarithmic scale, so 3 decibels increase in sound is actually a doubling of the sound. So what we're experiencing here is more than a minor inconvenience. It's a growing threat to residents' quality of life, safety, and the wider environment. So let me begin with the most obvious impact, the noise. The sound of helicopters taking off and landing is relentless, deep, pounding, and inescapable. It invades our homes, disrupts sleep, startles children, and interferes with daily life. This is not the occasional buzz of a plane overhead. It's a sustained, aggressive noise that doesn't belong in a residential neighbourhood. When you're performing an activity that's disturbed by the helicopter and it lands, it may wait there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. How do you know how long to wait before you can start and continue your activity? Then there's the very real issue of safety. Helicopters operating so close to homes create a risk that simply shouldn't exist in suburban areas. Mechanical failure or pilot error, even once, could have tragic consequences. We shouldn't have to fear for our safety every time rotors spin. The environmental disruption is also significant. Helicopters burn aviation fuel, emit pollutants directly over homes, schools and beaches, and disturb wildlife and fauna. They invade our privacy by flying low enough to see into our gardens, yards and windows. Interestingly, drone flying is becoming quite frowned upon for this very reason, but it's okay to fly a 6,000-pound helicopter around looking in your windows. The constant intrusion is making people feel exposed in their own homes. The physical effects on our properties are increasingly impossible to ignore. Just ask the residents at 12 Cremorne Street, or the ones near 12 Cremorne Street. Their pool and deck is regularly filled with leaves and other debris stirred up by the helicopter's downwash. This is one of the effects that I was referring to that need to be considered in a consent. Nearby, next door at 15 Cremorne Street, residents have had to deal with salt spray being blown onto their property, damaging plants and outdoor spaces. These are not small inconveniences, they are signs of a neighbourhood under siege from rotor wash. It doesn't stop at the property line either. Beachgoers are also being affected. At 64 Sentinel Road, reports by bathers whose personal belongings, towels, umbrellas and even bags are being blown into the water from the powerful gusts created by overhead helicopter activity, not to mention the danger. I know I'm on time, but I'm over my time probably, am I? So is there sound on this? But if you look at this, you'll see the rotor wash come in. This is at 78 Sentinel or Sarsfield Street. You see the rotor wash there on the water now as it's coming into land, and you can see it's creating the water to wash up quite severely. So the other consent conditions are regularly breached, flight paths not adhered, loading times increased and often flying low among nearby townhouses, often early on weekend mornings, and the strange people coming and going around landing times. Maybe they're not the owners of the property that have the consent, who would know? The natural character of our neighbourhood is being damaged every time these rotors spin. We're not opposing aviation, we're blessed with many nearby aerodromes, including Mechanics Bay, North Shore, Rosedale Road, Onehunga, Ardmore, Auckland Airport. They're all over the place. There's a time, a place and a proper zoning for helicopter activity, and a quiet residential street is not it. We're simply asking this council to protect what we all value: safety, privacy, peace, and the right to enjoy our homes, beaches and public spaces. Last time we were here, a proposed plan change was delayed due to the cost till 2026, until the 2026 10-year review of the Auckland Unitary Plan. Last week, Chris Bishop announced that these and other council plan reviews and changes will be stopped through an amendment paper to the Resource Management, Consenting and Other System Changes Amendment Bill, which is expected to become law next month. This means that there will be no review of the AUP in 2026. No doubt there will be, and so therefore, no doubt there will be significant funds set aside for this review that will now not take place. We suggest that there is no longer a need to wait to 2026. A small part of those budgeted funds could be used to implement a resident-friendly helicopter consent policy right now. Please support the notice of motion put by Mike Lee and change the Auckland Unity Plan on consenting or the consenting process right away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don. Give our best wishes to Dirk. Sorry, he's unwell. And thank you for your work on this. And I know that, well, I can assure you that nearly everyone here that I've spoken to agrees that the permitted, the choosing to go against council's determination on the reasons for decline is a large concern to all of us, which is why we have that item 11 paper as well. Do we have some questions? I don't have any yet, I'm assuming. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Don. Really appreciate that. Just coincidence, that particular piece of video, that helicopter did not land. It actually came in and departed, did it? I was focusing on you and the video.
Yeah, that helicopter was part of a test that they did at 78 Sarsfield Street when Rod Duke, that's Rod Duke's boat shed there.
Okay, that was a test. Okay.
Yeah, that was a test flight to determine the noise and the downwash effects of it, yeah, whether it could land.
So in that situation, we're going to be careful that we don't refer to a matter that's under appeal now, but I'll navigate that one carefully. So the effects on recreation, if somebody's out there in their kayak, teaching their kid how to kayak, or whatever, or you're fishing, or you're swimming, or you're sunbathing, that would not be taken into account. Or the effect on, I don't know, shags that are in the Purakawa tree, that would not be taken into effect. Is that what you're saying? The limitation has been on the noise envelope as opposed to broader environmental envelopes?
Yes, that's correct. I think that under restricted discretionary, it's only really the noise that's taken into effect. And even then, if the noise is exceeded, it's at the discretion of the commissioners at the hearing, if there's a hearing, and if there is a hearing, or the planners, to exceed it if they feel that it's not significant. Okay. Whereas if it's otherwise, if it's non-compliant, then they do have to make sure they take into all the effects of the helicopter landing, not just the noise. So
yeah, and that's what you're seeking.
Yeah.
So just in terms of, the possibility of moving to an activity status of prohibited, it's a very high bar, right? And there's not many activities in that category. That's my understanding. So in arriving at that's your preference, which is what Councillor Lee's notice of motion is steering us towards supporting. Have you read the report at item 11 on our agenda today?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Okay, that's okay, and I'm not saying you should or anything like that. Just in terms of arriving at your decision, your Residents Association decision to support a prohibited activity status, have you taken any sort of planning or legal inputs on that? You know, how achievable it is, what the bars, what the hurdles are, or otherwise what the implications are, what the risks are? Have you looked at that in any way? And Don, don't get me wrong here. Don't feel like I'm, having a crack at you.
No, I think you've been quite reasonable and fair about that, because prohibited is a very it's a very cut and dried sort of thing, and I don't think we believe that it's necessarily that they would be prohibited, but they'd be prohibited in a place where they are affecting residences. So prohibited could mean, say, prohibited within a certain distance of a residence. So that wouldn't be, if you know what I mean. I don't know whether it would still be then called prohibited, but there would be rules around how close you could be to a residential premises.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe overseas they have rules along those lines, where say within 200 metres of the nearest residence, for instance. So well outside any sound of noise effects.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is once if we agree to progress a plan change, then the subsequent reports might uncover a nuance on the prohibited status.
Yes, that's what we understand that would be necessary, because prohibited is very difficult. We understand that.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Matheson. You mentioned the existing operating helipads in the Herne Bay area. Coming from Waiheke, I always think that Waiheke is much smaller than Waitemata, but actually, geographically, it's not. Obviously, a lot more people live in Waitemata, and if the council's decision regarding Rawiri Avenue is upheld, then we have 4. But there was another case that the council approved, which went to the High Court, and the High Court cancelled the council's consent. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I believe you're talking about the Rod Duke helipad, which is in the picture there, where he had applied for landing consent to land his helicopter on top of that boat shed, the black one, which would have had a flat landing roof if that had gone ahead. And it was approved, but it was overturned in the High Court because there was a challenge by the Kowau Island Action people and us. And it was overturned because it was on a public beach. The boat shed is located on a public beach, and there were safety issues around it being on the public beach, and Mr. Duke, the owner of the shed, not being able to clear the beach when the plane was due to land, so that it would be safe in the case of some kind of event. I think that was the main reason that it was overturned.
So the council approved it, but the High Court cancelled it, in effect prohibited it, because essentially on the grounds of safety?
Essentially, I think that was the main reason that I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leone.
Thank you very much for the presentation and coming to speak to us today. My questions are just around the international examples, because you did raise it. There's been some other cities around the world that have banned their helicopter pads. Can you just talk to us about some of that information or anything that you're aware of that came to the run-up of them making that decision?
The decision of the overseas cities. I believe that they were banned in Melbourne because, I forget his first name, but Mr. Ansett, started Ansett Airlines, had started flying in and out of his property, and I think that the city saw what could happen, so they banned it in Melbourne. It was many years ago. I believe it's banned in Sydney and in New York, I think. It was quite popular from the slide, as you saw, that Jeanette put up. You know, it was a popular idea back in the 60s that we would all be flying around on helicopters by now and going to wherever we go. But that was seen as the way of a modern city, and I think that happened maybe in the 70s and 80s, but I think now the modern cities, the progressive ones, have realised that actually helicopters aren't part of a modern city transport network, and particularly private helicopters we're talking about here. I believe that's where they've moved to, and I don't know very many cities overseas where private helicopters are that popular or able to be consented.
Okay, thank you. And just a final question. If you are aware of any information around environmental impact specifically of the outcome of helicopters, private helicopter use here in Auckland, you might not have any, but just wanted to see if you've got any of that information at all.
No, I don't have any new information. I think the Quiet Skies guys have most of that information that's been made publicly available, but apart from the leaves from your trees ending up in your swimming pool when it comes into land, if it's your neighbour, that's the sort of effects that I'm thinking of. But obviously scaring of birds and so on is an issue too.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just last question from me, and your mention of the recent announcement from the Minister. Obviously, we haven't seen the legislation, and we do know that potentially the unitary plan review won't be compulsory, but we may still be able to do it. But did you also know that part of that would prevent us from putting any plan changes out that don't fit the small window of what the government...
Yeah, because I know, yes, I mean, it would be a plan change and that's what's going to be banned, but we thought you might be able to think of a cunning way around that for us.
Yes, we have tried to ask, but yeah, so I think the definition is sort of natural hazards and growth and one other. But anyway, we will come to that. We were going to be asking staff more about that, but yes, there are many challenges moving forward. Right, thank you very much. I'm sure Councillor Lee would like to move this one, and Councillor Fletcher would like to second a note of thanks. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Hills.
Okay. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Quick on how to proceed. We've got a paper at item 11 that helps us inform decision making, possibly on a notice of motion. So, how are you intending to navigate this? I mean,
Yeah, we have one more public input for the Waiheke.
Oh, true.
But we will discuss with the chair, with Sandra. But I think technically we could move item 11 up, but it's not. I don't believe there's a case of moving ahead of the notice of motion process. So I think we would have to go to notice of motion, questions of the mover, questions for staff. Then we move to debate on notice of motion. Of course, some questions on item 11 may come up during that period. Staff will be available, but it does make it tricky. But yes,
I'm just wondering if we can consider item 11 and the information and quiz our staff, but not necessarily move the recommendations, because I'm being respectful to the mover of the notice of motion, and then possibly leave that item having once gathered the information from reading and questioning and taken that to the notice of motion. Is that a possibility? And I'm interested.
There may be ways to do that. Phil Reid will be coming up during the notice of motion, so we may just allow him to do a short discussion on item 11 and questions. I will, as chair, allow questions to cover all of those topics.
I'd be interested to hear what Councillor Lee's view on how we approach it, considering we've got 3 papers there.
Cool. Thank you. Now we've got public input from Quiet Sky Waiheke. Kim Whitaker, kia ora.